Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Education. Tonight, Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. This meeting is now called to order. Mrs. Weems, will you please take roll call?
Mr. McCall?
Here.
Mrs. Green?
Here.
Mrs. Green?
Here.
Mr. Rich?
Here.
I myself am here. Mrs. Smith? Mrs. Smith is having technical difficulties. She should be joining us shortly. Mrs. Cummings is also maybe joining us shortly. And Mr. Johnson will not be attending, but we do have 4 board members, so we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mrs. Weems. Okay, moving now to Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Mukmal.
I move that we approve the agenda for today, November 10th, 2020, as presented.
Is there support? I will support it. Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda. Whoops. Mrs. Weems, was that you?
Yes, Mr. Mukamal, sorry.
Mr. Mukamal.
Yes, I made the motion.
Yes.
I made the motion. Yep.
And then I supported it.
And you had just asked me to do a roll call. I missed it, right?
No, I hadn't asked you yet, Mrs. Weems. Sorry. That's where I think there's some.
I'm sorry.
Yep, just hang on 1 second. We'll be right there in just 1 second. So we have a motion by Mr. Mukmal, supported by myself, that the Board of Education approve the November 10th, 2020 regular meeting agenda as presented. Mrs. Weems, can you do roll call vote, please?
Point of order, Madam Chair. You need to call for comment.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. McMullen. I'm being thrown by all the technical stuff right now, trying to watch here. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Mr. Mukmal.
I would suggest that we add an item to action item, which is item, hang on 1 second. Action item, which is item 9, item 9B, which would be a motion in support of the district's recommendation regarding item 7C, which is the return to school mitigation plan.
Okay, Mr. Mukmal has a motion that we add item B to the action item, which is number 9, regarding the district's recommendation for back to school. Is there support for that?
Support.
Mr. Rich. We have a motion by Mr. Mukamal, supported by Mr. Rich, that we add a B item to action items for the board to support the district recommendation plan on returning to school for elementary.
Yeah, well, to be specific, it's not the return to school plan. So it would be the motion, which should read that the Board of Education supports the recommendation of the district as presented under item 7C, the return to school mitigation plan.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to catch you as fast as I can, Mr.
Yeah.
Mokel. The Board of
Yeah.
Education supports the recommendation
Of the district
of the district
as presented under item 7C.
as presented under item C.
C,
Got it?
which is the return to school mitigation plan, which is under discussion items.
School mitigation. Okay. All right, I
And that was
got it.
supported by Mr. Rich.
I got that. Okay. So the motion that's up right now for discussion is the Board of Education supports the recommendation of the district as presented under item C, the return to school mitigation plan. Is there discussion? You're not seeing any discussion. Mr. Muckamel, do you want to revise your initial one to your initial approval to be this one then? Is that what you're asking to do? Is there any objection by any board members to do that?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And I see no objections, so we will vote on this at this point. So we're at, the recommendation is the Board of Education approve the agenda with the addition of under item 9, action item B, the board supporting the district as presented under item C, the return to school mitigation plan. Okay, Mrs. Williams, can you do a roll call vote on that, please? And I'm going to catch up quick.
Okay, I would just ask if the tech folks might unmute the 8400 line. I've also dialed in on my phone just because I am experiencing technical difficulties. On the current motion, Mr. Mukamal,
Yes.
Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Rich,
Yes.
I myself, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. I just need 1 second here trying to catch up. Thank you. All right. Moving
Pam, can I
forward.
interrupt for 1 second?
You may.
Wes, I can't unmute that line under the attendees. I don't know if you can help with that.
Thank you. So far, so good. We'll see.
Are you okay, Mrs. Williams, to go forward?
I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving to item B under items from the president. Welcome to the November 10th Farmington Board of Education regular meeting. As all of our members are participating remotely, I am formally giving voting rights to all board members for remote voting. Farmington Public Schools, together with our community, will engage every student in a quality learning experience, empowering each student to become a thoughtful, contributing citizen in a changing world. The board's priorities for the 2020-2021 year are 1, fostering development of the 21st century skills, 2, assessing program impact on student academic achievement, 3, fostering a positive district culture and climate that incorporates equity and inclusion, 4, recruiting, hiring, developing, and retaining high-quality staff that reflects diversity, and 4, ensuring equitable practices. The Farmington Area Goodfellows Canned Food Drive will continue through November 24th. Canned goods are being accepted outside at Farmington and North Farmington High Schools, along with each elementary school, both city halls, the Costic Center, and the downtown Farmington Public Library. Public comments will be shared after discussion items. If the public comment is intended to be critical of or express dissatisfaction with a particular staff member, student, or group, you are encouraged not to identify the person by name. You may request a private meeting with district representatives or utilize the complaint process found in our policy manual and administrative regulations manual, which provide for resolution at the complainant's closest point of origin. Please note that meetings of the Board of Education are conducted for the purpose of carrying out the business of the schools and therefore are not meetings of the public and the board, but board meetings held in the public. Generally, board members and the superintendent will not respond to public comments during the board meeting. Issues may be referred to the superintendent for investigation, study, and/or response. I would also like to take this time to congratulate our new Board of Education members who will join the board beginning January 2021. With the 6-year terms, we have Mrs. Cheryl Blau, Mrs. Mabel Fox, and with our 2-year term, we have Mrs. Claudia Heinrich. Again, congratulations to our new board members. Moving now to item number 3, items from the secretary. I'm not sure, is Mrs. Smith with us yet or not? I'm not hearing Mrs. Smith. I'm going to go ahead and handle this item. Okay.
Madam Chair, I can also fill in if you prefer.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. McCall.
The board has received communications regarding the return to school plans at the elementary and secondary levels, the Plant Moran final audit, and honors math. Communications are acknowledged, and when appropriate, a response is provided. A list of correspondence can be found in the board packet, which is available on the FPS website. That is the report of the secretary, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving to the next item on the agenda is legislative update with Mr. Rich.
Thank you. With the elections having taken place, the state legislature as well as the federal legislature will start meeting back up for action on the legislative agenda. And so whatever's passed, we will be sure to keep people updated with as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. I know you've been very busy, so thank you. Moving to the next item on the agenda is district updates. Item A is strategic plan update, and tonight we have Dr. Coffin joining us. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. So good to see you tonight. The board in their packet did have some information regarding the strategic planning work that the district's been doing. So I just wanted to provide a brief overview to kind of complement that information. So as you know, we have been working on our strategic planning initiatives, really looking at past work, understanding what has gone well and what areas for improvement we could actually find through this process. As you heard this evening, President Green read the district's priorities, and using those priorities and keeping those in mind, we've identified 4 focus areas that really will help us to do work at a systems level. Those include focusing on leadership and organization, people and skills, culture and values, and processes and tools. So from those focus areas, also keeping in mind an overarching theme of equity and innovation as a vision point for the district, we have been able to identify 8 potential goal areas. Those include creating a culture for equity and innovation, a focus on teaching and learning, effective management of district resources, and one that I think is very exciting is a Farmington Public Schools Futures Committee, where we'll be working together as a community to see what it is that we want as a school system and a school community for our students here at Farmington. The next steps in this process include now work with the board at an upcoming board workshop. At that workshop, we'll be reviewing those goal areas a little bit more in depth. And the primary function of that work will also be around the key performance indicators that have been identified. So looking forward to working with the board as we look at those key performance indicators and identify the metrics that the board would like to have reported on a regular basis, so the board can monitor the work of the district as well as our successes and our improvement as we move forward. So that's kind of an overview, and looking forward to our upcoming workshop with the board.
Thank you, Dr. Coffin. That's exciting work, and we appreciate your lead in putting that back together for us. The item B under district updates, monitoring learning update. And I think Dr. Coffin, that's you as well.
That is, and I'm going to bring Ms. Hendrickson in also to help support this conversation. So, as you know, it's been very important for us as a learning community to be able to monitor the learning of our students during this this very interesting time in education. So we, as you know, you've approved plans for pandemic learning, and so I think it's important. We wanted to share with you the metrics that we are looking at, knowing so that you can be assured that our students are learning and what are the areas that we are focused on and that the board can expect to be updated on. So we're going to talk about 3 different areas today. Of course, academic achievement is always top on our mind, but also how are our students doing through social emotional learning, and how do they feel supported? And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the use of Canvas. As you know, the district implemented a new learning management system this year. And so wanted to share some information with you on engagement, both of our students, our teachers, and our parents. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to start with, hopefully, the academic achievement, if I can. Oh, that's not what I want to share. Maybe I will. Margaret, if you, I'm going to see how to do this because it's not letting me share like I normally do.
Yeah, mine does not. I don't know if Kim has to turn that on.
Yeah, because it's not letting me share. It only lets me share.
Do you have it where it says open system preferences? Sure.
Are you using the share at the bottom of the screen or at the top of your screen?
Bottom, but should I share the top? I use the top.
Kelly has to be as a presenter.
Okay.
Can you move her to a presenter, Kim?
Let me see.
So as we're looking for that, the board does have this information also in your packet. When we talked to the board as part of our conversations around our extended learning plan, obviously monitoring learning, there were some requirements that were set forth by the state. One of those included looking at our NWEA data for our students in grades 1st grade through 9th grade in reading and 1st through 8th grade in math. And then also an assessment with our kindergarten students. So it looks like I got a presenter. So I might be able to do this here.
So as Kelly sets that up, we always want to keep in mind that we're using multiple data points. So there are these data points that set up some broad perspective and looking across a district building or grade level or grade band. But then we also have more local data that is more specific to the instruction materials, the curriculum that teachers are using daily. So we always want to make sure that every data point is nested in a variety of data points because that really lets us tell the whole story. But we've been looking through a large data set and kind of pulling out what are some key pieces that could give us a glimpse in where we are now and where we're going. So in kindergarten, we've historically used Easy CBM as our benchmark assessment in literacy. And so we added in using that for mathematics per the legislative requirement to make sure we do math and literacy in the kindergarten grade level. And so what you'll notice here is that for literacy, there are 3 areas looked at: letter names, letter sounds, and phoneme segmenting, as well as mathematics. And so what we're going to be tracking is our percent of students that are low risk or no risk based on that assessment. And we're going to give this assessment 3 times this year and be able to monitor where those are. So students that are at risk are being entered into our MTSS system for support. So as we look at NWEA, which is, again, a benchmark assessment, different in design than Easy CBM, but it's been a consistent benchmark assessment in the district. One of the things that we wanted to look at, if you notice on the left-hand side, is we look at percent at, as kids take the assessment, it's nationally normed. So we look at what performance bands kids sit in, whether they're high, high average, average, low average, or low. And so you'll notice here under mathematics grade 1 through 2, for example, we're able to compare fall of last year to fall of this year. So the lighter color of each color band is last fall. The darker color of each color band is this fall. And we want to make sure that our students are starting in a similar place at the start of this year as they did last year. So you'll notice as you look at the content areas or grade bands that we're seeing students overall either maintaining in similar grade bands as last year as this year or higher. And so those are things we're going to be looking at is how they are in their percentile rank bands from last fall to this fall. And we'll look at how those performance bands change across the year. We want to remember that performance bands are based on a bell curve distribution. So usually you're going to see most of your kids in that average yellow range. And you'll notice that we have a number of kids above that average bell curve range. The other piece we're going to be looking at is NWEA allows us to make projections on growth across the year. So what you see here in the large round circles next to each of those graphs, you'll see 63% of our K1, I think that was K1 students, it got moved up a little bit, so I don't know what the title of that one was. 63% of our, grades 1 through 2 met their projected growth from last fall to this fall. In mathematics and in reading, 58% met growth from last fall to this fall. And you also can see that for the other grade bands. And so what's valuable about this is letting us look at specific projections by students. And what we'll be looking at this winter is looking at fall-winter projections and fall-spring projections. What is very valuable is that we've noticed in comparison to last year's fall to fall, so fall 2018 to fall 2019, we actually have more kids have met their growth from fall 2019 to fall 2020 that did in the previous year. And so we're actually showing some potential increased percent of students meeting growth, but we'll continue to monitor that as we go through this school year.
I think another piece that is really important to point out is that our secondary administrators meet on a regular basis, and they're really looking at how are their students doing, not only around engagement, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but really about are they passing their courses. And so here you can see some information there where almost 81% of our students in the middle school right now are passing within A, B, or C. And there you can see their average grade point average. And then at our comprehensive high schools, you can see, it's a little bit lower at about 75%, again, if they're passing with an A, B, or C. So this is being monitored, again, by the principals, and they're reaching out to students. Teachers are working with their students to make sure that they don't fall, they don't want them to fall behind.
And can I ask a question?
Yes, Terry.
Oh, great. Let me turn down my volume here. Sorry. Thank you. So the one thing that this is great. I really appreciate this data. I think we were all interested in understanding, how our kids were doing for sure, especially given the environment that we're in. So huge thanks for pulling this together. So you mentioned for 18 to 19, compared to 19 to 20, for at least NWEA, we have an increase in the number of students who are meeting their projected growth targets, which is great. Do we have that data for 3 through 5?
So what we these dashboards are the beginning of the final dashboard. So we do have the 3-5 data. It's just not on this sheet yet. We do have the 3-5, but it looks very similar. I noticed right now that we've pulled that data, but the 3-5 is missing. So we will be adding that.
Can you share that data with us along with the 18-19 data?
Yes.
And then similarly for middle school and high school, if there's a way for us to understand what the comparables are for the same period last year, that would be helpful too.
Okay. Another thing to just think about in terms of NWEA, when we look at the percent of students that have met projected growth, again, that's based on normed data. So it's expected that about 50% of students will meet their projections over any given period of time. So we always like it when we see that number over 50%. It's hard to actually get that number up to 100%, but just wanted to make that known as well.
that's a really helpful benchmark. Thank you for also sharing that. Mrs. Green, I think Mr. Mukmal has his hand up next.
Thank you. Mr. Mukmal?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are about why we are seeing such a large increase in high performance.
So I think there's a few things that are going on. I think one of the pieces we're seeing and we're hoping is a causal category for this is that we did a lot of work this summer really focusing the curriculum on priority standards. So one of the challenges we always face is trying to teach everything and everything well. And we've been very clear about what our priority standards are. So teachers are very fine-tuning their instruction to those standards. And if we can do deeper, more effective instruction and fewer standards, you can actually get more student growth than if you try to touch everything. So that's one piece. I think the other thing we're hearing, for example, from K-5 teachers is the amount of small group instruction that is occurring with students. And so you're able to target, which is one of the benefits of a lot of our small group instructional models, K-5. And so again, we're seeing targeted small group instruction. I would like to also connect that we did launch the use of Lexi and Dreambox to support mathematics and literacy for some personalized learning that might have an impact. We are aware that some of our kids took the assessment in person and remote. And so we are looking always at individual kid data. So while we look at this larger data set to get the trends in the district, teachers are looking at that data for individual kids who might have gone down or have gone up for just to kind of look at where kids are. So we're looking at a variety of causal categories. We'll be thinking about that throughout the year. That's one of the things you think about is what context now is setting ourselves up for that, and then what happens in winter and spring. So those are some initial thinkings that we're having. I do know that Kelly wanted to bring up a little bit of data that included the 3-5 data because that wasn't in the original dashboard. We're still building these dashboards to really see how they could best share our story.
Margaret, can you see the data from fall? Okay. Yep. So here, Ms. Weems, here's the data. I happen to have it pulled up on my screen, so I wasn't sure if I'd be able to share it, but.
So you'll notice this gives us the percent met projected growth. So this isn't the percentile rank data, but it's the projected growth, and you can see that by grade band. You'll notice that there are certain grade bands that might have a more significant, where we've maintained, or a more significant increase. And again, we're looking at what are the causal categories to those.
It would appear from the data that the reading numbers, the percentage who met that, the growth rate is higher there than it is for math.
Mm-hmm. And
so I'm sure that will inform some of your thinking about a couple of things. So based on my first question, it sounds like you're thinking about how we can apply some of the things that teachers are doing now to a situation when we're back to a regular full-time 5-day-a-week instruction. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing, which I find interesting, is that improvement in the reading scores seems to be, much higher than it is for math.
Mm-hmm. I know.
I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are about that and what we can do.
You're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to be here a long time because I'm sure Kelly and I would love to tear apart the interview.
It's not an academic excellence committee meeting. That's right. I'm sorry.
No, that's yeah. And I think it's important, in talking with teachers about this data, that at first, there's a lot of conversations around, some took it remotely, some took it in person. So after we kind of walked through some of that, teachers started, sharing that they know their students, especially at the lower L. They know their students better than they have before in the past, simply because the time that they get to spend in these small groups has increased significantly. So when you're in a remote setting, you're not worried about the entire class. You have a small group where you can focus primarily on those students. So paired with the technology that the district has invested in, that's really about personalizing learning and allowing students to move at their own pace in the area of reading, I think those are the things that we're going to be watching and digging deeper in to make sure that we continue those practices.
I think another piece around that noticing you had about the math and the reading is remember the way the reading standards actually stay, not to oversimplify it, consistent across the grade bands. They just get a little deeper and deeper and deeper. And some of that happens in mathematics. But in mathematics, when there are certain standards that students haven't mastered or become proficient in, those are just a different process for intervening and making sure the content is accessible and scaffolded for them. So there's some differences in the content and how intervention is built. And I think that learning progression in reading lends itself, and our instructional model lends itself. So those are some of the things we've long-term been challenged in mathematics and we're continuing to work on.
I don't usually get to engage in this conversation, but I can't resist. I know Kelly and Margaret would know eventually I would jump in here. But just Kelly mentioned one thing, and this is what I've been fairly impressed with the district and our, our utilization of those adaptive tools or the software programs that which Kelly and Margaret will say is personalizing. But I'd like to just say that a different way in terms of what we mean by personalizing. We know when we want to meet individual students' needs and we talk about tiered interventions, the real goal is to be very diagnostic in terms of assessing what their deficiencies are, and then very prescriptive about applying a resource or instructional strategy or support that will help their individual needs. So these programs are adaptive, so they become personalized because they're very diagnostic, so they diagnose each student's deficiencies individually, and then they provide prescriptive instructional supports for them and strategies so they can grow. So that's what, when we say personalized, that's what we're really talking about, is diagnosing the students at right where we know that they need what their deficiencies are, and then being very prescriptive in our strategies to help support them. And these tools have become very, very sophisticated at being able to do that. Certainly doesn't replace teaching, nowhere near that, but as a supplement to the core instruction, they're very valuable. So that's been my experience with them, and I can see that our students are experiencing the same gains with this. So it's great to see that these resources, as Margaret said, our investment in technology and supports are actually, there's a return on that investment this year.
We've also extended, we have literacy footprints, which was another investment that was new for us this year that supports online guided reading groups so that we could ensure we have the same level of guided reading group work remotely as we did in person. So I think that was a great investment on our part as well to support this remote learning. Student voice is very important. So we did a fall survey kind of towards the end of Q1. So kids really had an experience through the first quarter. And we wanted to look at various questions. You'll see on the left is about whether it's self-reporting of their percent completing work. Is my teacher asking how am I doing? Does my teacher know how I am doing? And what kind of support they need. And so this data does give us some indication that there's a lot of positives in terms of what our students are experiencing. But there are data pieces in here that continues to prompt us to ask questions about the kids that do feel like they need support, or they feel like they're not completing their schoolwork as often as they should. So we asked actually this on a larger survey that was taken in class. And on the right-hand side, we ask about how they felt overall about remote learning. You know, we've talked a lot at the board or in the public or in a meeting about how our kids are doing remotely, but we wanted to ask them what they thought about how they were doing remotely. And 69% felt that they were doing very well or very well. So we still want to look at that 1 and 2 level, the 25.9 and the 4.5. And this question actually has an open response answer. So buildings are looking at the open response because that's going to tell us what the need is and the support is. We asked them how they were doing. What was that first question? I didn't have it memorized.
The first question is, how would you describe your engagement?
Sorry, your participation. And then the next part is about how is remote learning going for you? I apologize. I flipped those in my head. So we're getting a sense of what they feel their engagement and participation is, how well they're doing in remote learning. And the last question actually asked them, how similar is their performance now as compared to prior to now? And so we've been taking this student survey data, and the middle school and high school building teams are analyzing through not just these overall graphs, but the actual open-ended questions that indicate to us what students need help with. Is it Canvas? Is it executive functioning and planning their time? Is it content understanding? Is it X? Is it Y? So we really can have from student voice what those causal categories are so we can put supports in place. The other piece we've been doing, and this is going to get more sophisticated in terms of the types of questions we're going to ask, but we've asked every month teacher Canvas check-ins on how they're feeling in terms of the types of features they're being asked to use. And we also wanted to get feedback from students about implementation of Canvas. So you'll notice on the left and right side, there's teacher feedback and student feedback. But what was so amazing is there's all these analytics within Canvas that lets us see how many observer accounts have been set. That means parent accounts. 2,970 is how many parents are observing their students. We're going to put some things in place to kind of increase those numbers. So we're going to be monitoring that. So we have a moment in time look at what number of assignments are going through Canvas. The discussion items. There's actually a discussion board that you can use to engage learners in discourse asynchronously, as well as keeping track of the apps that we're continuing to integrate or add-ons that we're adding to Canvas. So we're wanting to make sure what's the use like of Canvas. And again, the left and right side talks about teacher and student feedback. We're getting a lot of good data that indicates that teachers are feeling ready or meeting the expectations. And so we're using that data as well as the open response to figure out what our next step is for implementation expectations and professional development. On the right-hand side, we're hearing from students about what they feel about Canvas, and it has been clear to us that there is a subsection of students that are struggling kind of to navigate Canvas because the way assignments are set up in Canvas is variable from teacher to teacher because there's more than one way to do that. We do have a plan to push out a PD through a staff meeting for all secondary staff on best practices for creating their modules and assignments in Canvas. And this is a direct intervention, professional development based on student and parent concerns about how their students are navigating Canvas so that we're responding to the data. And that will help uniform how students experience Canvas.
All right, so that just gives you the board a brief overview of what we are monitoring related to what we know impacts teaching and learning for our students. So we will continue to provide these updates to the board throughout the year. As you know, we will have one, I think it's February, following our winter testing. So thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from board members before we move forward? Seeing no comments from board members, we'll now move to the next item on the agenda, which is reports from board committees. Mr. Mukamal, I believe you are doing Academic Excellence, Strategic Planning, Communications Committee.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Academic Excellence Committee met on November 3rd at 2:30 p.m. Just to refresh the memory of folks in the community, the committee is comprised of Jessica Cummings, who chairs the committee, Pam Green, who is president of the board and came a little bit late to the last meeting, and myself. So in addition, we had Dr. Herrera, Dr. Coffin, Dr. McDougall, Diane Bauman, Margaret Hendrickson, Kirsten Kachella, and Kim Buckley. So we talked about three major areas, the first being in-person learning update. And there the discussion was basically about how we are doing with the small groups that have gone to in-person learning, and was there an issue with respect to COVID. So we know that Dr. Herrera has established a COVID response team that will, and so he talked about that as well as mitigation strategies. The second item was strategic planning, and Dr. Coffin has already presented to the board about that. So we had simply asked that you make that presentation today. The next step, as she indicated, is going to be to refine goal areas and identify specific KPIs with the district network team, and then it will be presented to the board in our workshop. The third item was standards-based grading. And there was some discussion about the history of that within the district. And there was some back and forth Q&A. Key thing, walkaway, was that we needed to clarify the difference between standards-based grading and standardized grading across the district, because they are two different concepts. And that it was noted that future work in this area is going to be embedded in part of the strategic plan under the area of teaching and learning. The last item was future agenda items, and we set the date for the December board workshop. And that is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving to the next item on the agenda is discussion items. Item A is summer tax collection resolution with Mrs. Kaminsky.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So on an annual basis, the Board of Education is presented with a resolution regarding the collection of property taxes. So we have continued to levy our property taxes 50% in the summer and 50% in the winter. And that's largely due to the financial impact it would have on our local taxpayers if we were to shift to 100% summer tax collection. So the timing of the collection doesn't impact the total dollars the district receives. However, it does have an impact on cash flow as we receive 50% of it midway through our fiscal year. So again, for the upcoming year, I am recommending that we stay with a collection of 50% in the summer and 50% in the winter. And we are asking that the Board of Education approve the resolution at the November 24th meeting and waive the reading of the resolution. I can answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, hearing no questions, so item B.
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Mrs.
I
Weems?
don't have any questions, but I did want to just acknowledge that this is pretty normal. We've done this every year, so I don't anticipate any issues, comments, or questions with this one.
Thank you, Mrs. Weems. Item B is uninterruptible power supplies, UPS, bid Mrs. Kaminsky.
Okay. So enclosed in your board packet was a memo from me, as well as from Wes Prescott, our Director of Technology at Oakland Schools. And he works directly with Farmington Schools. And I'm going to turn it over to him in just a few minutes to explain the need for the UPSs, or the uninterruptible power supplies, and the bid process that took place on behalf of several Oakland County school districts. Also included was summary of the bid results from the 4 vendors that bid on the project. So if the purchase is approved by the Board of Education at the November 24th meeting, funds would come from the Capital Projects Building and Site 2018 fund. So I'm going to turn it over to Wes to just walk through the summary of results and explain the need for these UPSs.
Yep. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we at Oakland Schools in 2019 we went out for bid for uninterruptible power supplies, or UPSs. It's essentially a battery backup, and it's a device that we put in all of our network closets. So in the event of a power failure, a brownout, a short power interruption, the network and phones will remain up and active for that period of time. Currently, throughout the district, there are no battery backups. I don't believe in most, well, I know there are not any in most of the network closets throughout the district. We do have 3 large UPSs at the data center in the tech building on 10 Mile. Those are way past end of life. We're not recommending replacing those with a like UPS, but more a smaller, more right-sized device that will be able to carry the load and maintain the network until the generator kicks in at that building. So this this process. We went out for bid. We received 4 responses for UPSs. The coast-to-coast bid was the most cost-effective, and we did write that bid with the language that any district in Oakland County could purchase off of it, and the pricing was good for 5 years. So if this is approved, we will purchase, I believe it's 84, sorry, my screen's really small, 84 or 89 UPSs. There'll be one placed in every network closet throughout the district. They will maintain the load of the network equipment in the closet for anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes in event of a power outage. So it's not going to get you through a school day, but it's going to get you, long enough to save your work, to make a phone call if needed, or if there is a generator in place, for the generator to kick on. One of the other advantages, it also protects the network equipment, all of our switches, from power surges and brownouts. The network's a pretty large investment, actually a very large investment, and a battery backup is kind of an insurance policy on that equipment. So it doesn't succumb to constant power surges or a loss of power and a restoration of power, which can be hard on those devices.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from board members?
I have a question, although no one can see me. First, I want to thank Ms. Weems and Ms. Bauman and Ms. Buckley for trying to help me get on here. So for those that don't know, I'm not able to see anyone, so I'm doing this from my phone. So is it okay that I ask a question?
Yes,
Or
please
does
do.
someone have their hand up?
No, go ahead, and then we'll have Mr. Rich, followed by Mr. Mukmal.
Okay, so the question that I have, you said that so are these under warranty? And if they are, how long is the warranty?
So the UPSs have a 5-year warranty.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Rich?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up one thing. Wes, it's good to see you again.
Yes,
it is, one thing that he mentioned that I just want to bring to the public's attention is the bid was written in a way that others in Oakland County would be able to purchase with this same bid amount, with the same bid amounts. And that's something that we were able to do as a board over the past years, enter into an agreement where, should other districts have received bids for services that we end up needing, we'd be able to use those numbers as well, which definitely, one, cuts down on cost, but also the amount of time it would take us to get the things that our district desperately needs. So just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Mr. Mukmal?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Prescott, do you have experience working with this supplier?
Yes, we've installed the same devices in, I can't say all of the districts that we support, but I've installed them in one of the districts that we support, or that I oversee, and I know that at least 4 or 5 others have had experience with the same device and the same vendor.
Good. Okay. Next, my other question is to Mrs. Kaminsky. Do we have the funds allocated for this purchase?
Yes, it is coming out of the technology portion of our 2015 bond fund. So.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I had a question also.
Mrs. Weems?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand, what have we been relying on in the past that is not working that necessitate this? I'm not the tech person at all, so I'm just trying to get a better understanding.
So throughout, in most of the network closets, I believe there's 84 or 89 throughout the district. There are the majority, if not all, don't have anything in place currently.
So are you saying we're at risk now if there were a power outage?
Yes.
And so when we've had power outages in the past, what have we done to kind of mitigate the risk?
When you lose power, the network goes down until power comes back up.
I believe the official terminology is the seat of the pants approach.
That would be accurate.
Okay,
So
thank you.
And it's really it's one thing we put in place anywhere we can. It's one of the the biggest recommendations that we have. That your network is a hundreds of thousands of dollar investment, and this is kind of a protection to ensure that during a power surge, or not even a power surge, but when you lose power and power comes back on, it can cause some damage. You've seen it probably in your houses if you don't have a surge protector, and this is kind of in place to mitigate that risk as much as possible.
And Wes, our phones are tied to the network too, so this keeps
Correct.
our phones activated, correct?
Yep. And again, these devices are not meant to keep the network running for hours. It's meant, depending on the amount of equipment plugged into it, you're going to get probably 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're lucky. But it's really going to ensure that when power is restored, it's not frying. It's much less likely to damage equipment.
So it's basically a soft landing.
Correct. Yep. And in the event that you have, a power blip where you lose power for 10 seconds, your network, switches when they lose power take, anywhere from 5 to 10, to 15 minutes to come back online. So that 10-second power outage has now led to a 20-minute internet outage. Whereas with this device, you'd have no outage. And it also allows us to, these devices can send our team notifications as to when there's a power outage. So if a building loses power, we have a team that will get a notification that'll say, Farmington High School network closet 3 is on battery backup. And we can respond accordingly.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes,
Thank you.
I have a question. So so when you say you have someone because it's pretty much like an alarm system. If your alarm system goes down, somebody sends something over to your company will, so how long, since you say it's a few minutes before, that this will work, how long does it take for your company to come in and, take care of this? Is it in a matter of minutes or something?
Well, so
that you all get the notification. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So we get the notification as soon as an event occurs. So if power is lost now, within however long it takes for an email to get delivered, the people who are on that or part of that group will get that email. Now, if it's a power outage, we can report, or that outage can be reported to DTE. If it's a complete power outage, there's not a lot we can do other than send out notification to those affected that, hey, there's a power outage. Here's the estimated time that DTE has for restoration. But it does. There's a lot of reasons that a network could go down, and if you can, if fiber gets cut, network could go down. If power's out, network could go down, and those are it's very beneficial to know which event you're dealing with. If we know that the network went down because there's a power outage, we know to contact DT. If the network goes down and power is still active, then we know there's another issue that we have to investigate, whether there's a fiber cut, a switch has failed, or things like that. So it's another piece of information that we would have to be able to respond appropriately and timely.
The last question that I have is why 5-year warranty? You don't have anything longer?
The devices, typically the batteries in them usually need to be replaced every 5 years or so.
Okay.
So the batteries just like a battery in your car or in a remote, they have a useful life. These are a little bit longer, but they do degrade over time.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move now to the next item on discussion item C, Return to School Mitigation Plan. We have Dr. Herrera and Dr. Coffin.
Thank you, President Green. Would like to catch the board up on some of the things we've continued to learn regarding the pandemic and how we continue to ensure that our students and staff are safe. But first, I'd like to go back and comment or frame a comment Mr. Mukamo made regarding the COVID response team. So we have the wellness committee that has been doing an unbelievable job at putting together all the protocols and safety mitigation strategies. So I certainly don't want to take away any of the tension or certainly would like to acknowledge all the work and effort that the wellness committee has put into this. They meet weekly and they've done an amazing job. Like I said, putting all the mitigation strategies in place and even, determining how we would operationalize those. The need for the COVID response team was due to the fact that, as you know, over the past couple of weeks, we've moved from a C risk level to an E risk level, which means the spread is quadrupled in some cases in terms of the rate or the number of people infected or impacted by it. So one of the things we've come to understand is that as we develop our mitigation strategies, which, as I mentioned, are very sound and probably, according to the health department, certainly parallel with any other district in the county and maybe above them. We have concerns about returning to in-person learning, not due to the programming that we've developed, our ability to cohort or trace, or the social distancing and any other mitigation strategies. The community spread right now is having an impact on our ability to operationalize the programming. So if I say that a different way, the COVID response team will determine not necessarily if it's safe to return, but can we return? So for example, we have, if we return to in-person learning, could we run into a potential sub shortage and have to close due to a number of staff being quarantined? If we have an outbreak in transportation, what level of that outbreak would decrease our capacity to actually bring all of our children into school? So we're more worried about the operational effects of the pandemic right now and our ability to provide in-person programming. So working with the health department over the last couple of weeks, or certainly listening to their guidance, what has become apparent as they've worked with schools that have returned in person is that the virus is not necessarily spread within the school environment. Most schools are doing a very good job at mitigation and reducing the risk of spread within the school system. So most of the staff quarantine and student quarantine have been due to the fact that folks have been exposed outside of the school. So if you think about it, as the number of cases are on the rise as we move from a C to an E risk factor, the number of folks that are going to be impacted by that rise in community spread are going to impact our ability to staff and run our departments. So the COVID response team is really the group that's going to not overview or monitor the mitigation strategies. The wellness committee will do that, but we're the group that is going to try to determine, boy, now that we have this many staff quarantined, Or now that we had a positive case, do we close the buildings? How long will we close? How many people have to be quarantined? And how will we work with the health department to make those decisions? So that's been some of the conversations we've had over the past 2 weeks. And so the information we've been looking at has mostly been, what is our in-school community spread? Our school system spread? Well, we haven't really had a case at this point in time where we believe that it's been transmitted within the school system. But right now we have 37 staff members quarantined, which of course is a small number compared to our total staff, but we're not even in person yet. So if you think about the fact that we haven't returned to any in-person program, and we have 37 staff members already quarantined, that gives you an idea of when folks start to return, how those numbers could grow. So one of the things we're considering right now, and what we'll have as a recommendation for the board as I take you through this conversation is some of the challenges that we see with operationalizing, the return to in-person. Again, I have to applaud the work of our curriculum instruction group, applaud the work of the wellness committee. They have the best plans for coming back. The board approved those plans. But if you recall, you approved those plans when the risk factor was at a C level, not an E level. And in my understanding of the E level is we are so far beyond the minimal number for the E level. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but you might as well consider us an F level at this point in time. So again, the risk level is very high right now. So we know that gives us an idea of how much this is being spread throughout the community. We know that with the community spread, we're not worried about spreading it while we're in school. But the fact is, our adults and our students are going to be exposed to the virus outside of school, and that's going to impact us when we return to school. There's no way we can reduce or mitigate or enforce those mitigation strategies on students and staff when they're not in the schools. So the numbers are going to rise. The number of quarantines are certainly going to rise, and we've already seen that, and we haven't even returned to in-person learning yet. The other interesting thing is we seem to have a change in heart of a significant number of our parents at the elementary level. Over the past week, we've had, about approximately between 130 to 150 parents now request their student go from in-person learning to remote learning. So once again, we're at a spot now where we either tell those parents, we're sorry, you made that decision a few weeks ago to be in person. We can't let you change your mind now, or we're going to have to go back and restaff for all the parents that have decided they want to now, because of the rise in the community spread and moving from the C to an E, they've had a change of heart on how safe they believe it is for their student to return. So you can see these are some of the things that we've been trying to work through. Our building administrators have done a great job working with each individual parent on their teacher selection. And I believe Dr. Coffin mentioned to me today that I think we've staffed or rescheduled about 500 or 600 students at this point in time in the district. So it's been a significant number of students and staff changes that we've been making to accommodate our parents and our students as we've been planning to move back to in-person. So naturally, all this comes from the educator perspective of what does this mean to our learning? So if we continue to have to move students from teacher to teacher, and in severe cases, we may have students in one building that are assigned to a teacher in a different building. And so how do you move from that back to in-person, back to remote, as we may have to quarantine or close schools due to this community spread? We also believe that this is a significant disruption to our families. We continue to tell our families, look, we're planning to return, and then the virus moves up and the spread moves up, and then we say, oh, we're going to have to pause it. So as you know, just a couple of weeks ago, based on an initial recommendation from the health department, when we went to a level E, the health department recommended that if you're remote, stay remote. If you have a plan to return, then please work with us on your mitigation factors and strategies so we can ensure that you have a safe return. So right now, we just finished up our document that we're submitting to Oakland County Health Department for approval. We're more than certain that we'll be approved for in-person learning, but still, can we operationalize this, and can we staff accordingly, and can we provide our department supports all the way from custodial department to transportation department, maintenance and facility, and nutritional services. If we have outbreaks there, that takes away from our ability to provide educationally sound environments for our students and staff. So at this point in time, what we've determined is if we have any more than 7 or 8 bus drivers that were to have to call out sick, we would have severe difficulties in terms of being able to transport students to school. A significant portion of students we would have a hard time picking them up, is the bottom line. If we have 10% of our teachers that are absent on a given day, we would have to close those classrooms for the day because we wouldn't have subs to fill them. So these are some of the things that we've been talking about and trying to figure out how we would respond to them, the extent that we have the capacity in terms of workforce to really deal with them. So as we've been looking at other school districts and learning from them, in the area, school districts have been closing, restarting, closing, restarting. And at this point in time, we don't feel that that's in the best interest of our staff and students and parents, especially where the community spread is right now at the risk level E. So our recommendation to the board at this time, when the board has questions, I will probably ask Kelly and Kathy and some of our other cabinet members to respond. But at this point in time, what we're doing, we're recommending to the Board of Education now is that we continue to pause this in-person learning until we can consider a risk factor that we believe we can return. So like I said before, risk factor C, we believe we were fine returning, and we didn't think the spread was going to impact our workforce or impact our students to the extent that we believe it will in an E risk factor. So our position is to pause in-person learning with yet another start date of 1/11 for the K-5. So January 11th, we would want to re-engage to in-person learning with our K through 5 programming. We would keep the same start date as we've always had with our secondary as 1/25 or January 25th. So the reason for the 2-week separation there in terms of the timeline is it's very difficult for us to return to all programming at once. So we need more of a shotgun approach to this. So we believe that 2-week transition period of bringing the elementary back as we prepare for the secondary return will allow us to do that effectively and safely and efficiently as we move forward. So the recommendation from the cabinet, I talked to our union presidents just earlier today to get feedback from them. And I know our cabinet members have talked to staff and their direct reports. Unfortunately, as much as we would like to have the students return, we believe we'd be bringing them back only to close again due to workforce shortages, quarantines, and positive exposures. And we're not certain of how the benefit of bringing folks back for a very short period of time, only to expose them at the worst point in the pandemic. So again, not an easy decision. I know there's a lot of different perspectives and beliefs on this pandemic and what's in the best interest of students. We've tried to take as many perspectives into consideration as we can. But again, we still come back to the same position as we believe at this point in time, the educational value supports remaining remote. And we also believe that the risk of exposing our staff and students, because of the risk level right now that we're experiencing, it's safer to keep them in a remote setting as well. I know the board's going to consider this as an action item. And as always, I would like the board to know that we will certainly respect and we will implement any decision that you make. But I did feel it was necessary for us to give you an update. And I know that the timeliness of this isn't great, but this is what we've learned over the last 2 weeks. And we learned a lot of this just as of Monday this week. So we're getting this information to you in the most timely manner we can. And I believe it's enough information that we believed that we could make an informed decision and we could make a recommendation to the board. So our recommendation is that we would stay remote minimally till 1:11 for K-5. We would go as planned with the secondary at 1:25, and we would probably begin to review this again in December to monitor the spread and all the factors we're considering right now. So if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask myself and the cabinet any of those questions.
Questions from Mr. Mokomal? Any questions? Mr. Mokomal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Burr, just to clarify, so the reason why we have put as an action item for this evening is because right now the plan for K-5 is to return to school next Monday. And that is before the next board meeting, at which time we would be voting to approve the back to school plan. Is that your understanding?
That the board can weigh in on that decision. In your plan, it does give the administration it does authorize the administration to pause learning and close school within your plan. However, I would certainly like to acknowledge that there's many boards that feel the responsibility of doing this on behalf of their school community, and they want to move it through an action item. So we've had some neighboring school districts who boards have called early morning week meetings and emergency closed their buildings. We've had other boards that have still said, nope, we still want you to return to in person, even though we're where we're at with the pandemic. We've had other boards say we're just gonna let the superintendent make that decision. So I think it's as you guys have experienced this, there's no uniform approach to this anywhere in the county. It's a local decision that everybody weighs based on what they believe is safe for their school, the physical environment of the buildings, the mitigation, the community spread, and that's where we rely on the board to set those parameters as you represent the community and your decision is a reflection of the community. So I have no problem whatsoever of saying that the board shouldn't take ownership of this decision and make this decision. But the part I would like to acknowledge is the rationale for putting the COVID response team together. Sometimes we need a timely decision to close the school and quarantine and do things, and that's not very effective with always bringing the board together, catching everybody up to make that timely decision. So rather than me unilaterally making a decision, if a situation occurred and we needed to make a quick, decisive response, I would rely on the COVID response team to help me make that decision. But I think when we can bring the board into this conversation, when we can allow the board to weigh in on this, either acknowledging it and supporting it through a discussion item or taking action on it, I certainly support that transparency and involvement of the board. So this is the same situation. Here we're as a discussion item. I'm sharing the information with you to the extent I can. I'm giving you the best thoughts of our administration as we considered multiple perspectives and options on this. And I certainly respect the board's right and even willingness to take ownership of this decision in an action item. So you can support our recommendation. You can modify our recommendation as a board, and we will follow along accordingly. But we did feel that we needed to advise you on our new learnings over the past 2 weeks, catch you up on this, and let you know what our recommendation is at this point in time.
Dr. Herrera? Dr. Herrera?
Yes.
I want to say, I don't know who's got their hand up or whatever, and I'm sorry if I'm out of order or whatever. I want to thank you for coming forward with this, being transparent, coming to each one of us and calling. But I do agree that we do have a meeting after school is supposed to start back. And this is why I made the attempt to talk to my colleagues and send 3 emails out requesting that we have an emergency meeting so that when we got to this point today, this could have been voted on and a decision would have been made instead of waiting. So I'm where I'm at right now is I agree. The numbers are climbing. And, you know, we've got cases in Farmington Hills like no other. Where I'm at right now is I do believe that we do need to do something and not let these teachers and these parents think that their kids are going back. Students of teachers have already signed up for probably daycare or whatever, and we've got everybody sitting limbo. Like you said, you've been working with this and seeing these numbers climb for the past 2 weeks. I've asked for this discussion as early as of last week, so that we as a board could come together and work with you to shut this down because like it's being said, we won't have another meeting until
Miss
after
Smith,
school
point
is
of
supposed to be
information.
open. Just a second, Mr. Rich, I'm still speaking. So at the end of the day, where I'm going,
have a point of order.
just a second, please. At the end of the day, what I'm asking for, because see, this is the problem. You all don't listen to listen. You listen to defend. And I'm trying to make a point. And the point is there should have been more conversation like what Dr. Herrera is doing. And then we wouldn't be here and waiting until the next meeting or just putting this on him in his lap to make this decision, or board members that are not comfortable with doing this tonight. So I'm just saying to you, Dr. Herrera, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for reaching out, and thank you for being transparent.
Madam Chair, I think you're all.
Thank you. That point of information was just to let Ms. Smith know that we are voting on this tonight. It was added as an action item. I believe you might have still been trying to get into the meeting at the time. I just wanted to let you know that.
Yes, also, Mr. Rich, Dr. Herrera said that during his talk there, shared that has now been approved as an action item for the board. So, is there other comments by board members, questions?
Yep, I have a comment.
Swains.
So, one, thank you for bringing this to the board. I think across the board, it would be helpful if we had a little bit more clearer understanding on the decision-making process with respect to the plan for continuing remote, right? So in August, we approved a plan to start the year remote with the understanding that we would begin phase-in in October, after October, and then agreed that we would start K through 5 November 9th, and we did not vote on that because it was still part of the original plan. You know, it was, you know, sometime shortly after October 30th. And then we took action on the secondary plan, which is, you know, 6 through 12, not to return until January 25th. So I think it is helpful for us to understand, you know, the points at which we would make that decision. So last week, the district made the decision to pause from November 9th to November 16th. That made complete, total sense to me. I think we should allow the superintendent that flexibility to make the calls, similar to, you know, any other event like a school closing for snow, right? You know, that's not a board decision. The superintendent normally makes that decision. If, though, we get to a point where, you know, again, our plan called for starting phase in after October 30th, if the plan, you know, suddenly calls for months afterward, you know, January, February, March, I think it does make sense to bring that back to the board as an action item. I would suggest, though, that, you know, no different than what we usually do, we bring a recommendation in and then we have an action item in the next meeting, or as part of our ordinary process now whereby we're required to reaffirm the continuity of learning plan every month, that would just be the point at which we would have those discussions. But that's just my thought. I do appreciate all of the thought that's gone into this, and I also know that there's been a fair amount of discussion with the Oakland County Health Department, and a lot of recommendations sort of coming from that, and they've had an opportunity to weigh in. So I appreciate all of that.
Yep. And I think we're all saying the same thing. I, again, certainly respect the board's, your willingness to, not just lay this on the shoulders of the administration, but work with us to come to an agreement and approve either our recommendation or a modification of our recommendation. The part we haven't experienced yet, and I guess that's part of when we're asked about the mechanics of this and when we come back and when we don't come back, and the art of that is, remember, we haven't been in person yet. So that's going to be a whole new process if we're in person, as we work with the health department to determine the extent that we close for a short period of time, a longer period of time, or we close, at all. So that's the hard part for us to describe, because it's going to be situational. It's going to depend on the spread of the virus within the school system. And we know now that even though the health department isn't going to weigh in and close the school, but we may be forced to close the school now because we can't operationally support in-person learning because of our workforce and the pandemic's impact on all of our adults and students outside of the school system. So that's what's complicated this even more so, moving to an E. We haven't been in E before, and we haven't, well, at least as we've been in school, and we haven't experienced this rapid rate of folks being quarantined and exposed to the virus. So that's been the whole new learning for us on this is, what do we do now? How do we figure this out? How is this going to impact us? And that's been our work over the last week and a half, quite frankly. So I certainly wish we could have got this information to you last week and made a decision. But honestly, we've been learning every day for the last 2 weeks on this. And I would like to thank Oakland County Health Department. They have taken the position that they're not going to close schools, which, politically, I guess a lot of people would have their own opinion of that. But they have taken the position that they will endorse our return to school and say they believe the plans we have in place are safe for staff and students to return. So we're still going to submit our plan because eventually we know we're going to want to return or have an opportunity to return. And we want to make sure that we have that endorsement from Oakland County Health Department when we are ready to come back in-person learning. But we're just, unfortunately, the cabinet and the COVID response team and the wellness committee and the unions, none of us really believe that we can operationalize this. We all have concerns about workforce, and we have concerns about disrupting families with another start and stop. And we have concerns about what it's going to do to the staffing and scheduling by, once again, restaffing to try to accommodate our needs for actually a very short period of time until 1/11. So again, the other piece I would like to acknowledge is I know we have a lot of parents who want their children to return. And I know this is not going to be good news for them. We do want them to know that we've considered what this means to them. We know that they have a desire to have their students in-person learning. And we look forward to the day when we can do that. But considering all the perspectives on this and all the things we need to consider, we just don't believe it's in the best interest of the entire school community to bring folks back right now. So we will still continue on working on addressing the needs as we have at the secondary to provide additional supports for kids and their families the best we can during the remote learning. But in the end, this is our recommendation at this point in time. And again, I don't want the board to feel guilty for wanting to move this to an action item on their part. It's not in your plan in terms of doing that, but the administration, and I don't think the school community is certainly offended by the fact that you want to take ownership and be responsible for that decision. So don't feel like you're getting in our way on this.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. I also would like to say I appreciate the magnitude of this decision and the factors that you guys have thoughtfully considered in all aspects. It's definitely clear. We would like our students and our staff to be able to be in person. We know that's the ideal, but we also know that things change daily, and we're all affected by COVID in one way or another, and we want our staff and our students, as we've said, their safety and is a priority for the board. So thank you for the thoughtfulness behind this.
So it is also important to mention, though, and I was waiting for the end of this one, because, you know, most of the school population is going to be impacted by this decision. However, the board does need to remember that we have been in person for a couple of our programs. Early Child has been in person already. Certain special education services have been in person already. So we may still have an opportunity to transition those groups back in, but we need to weigh that information, and we need to work more closely with the health department on that safe return. So on those two programs, I do not have a recommendation for the board yet, because we have not had an opportunity to work with the health department to assess that mitigation plan and determine whether we can return those students safely. So we will be getting back to the board with an update on that as soon as we possibly can. But I would like to acknowledge that those programs have already been in person, so it's been a little bit different discussion about their return.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is public comments. We'll begin with Mrs. Buckley. Would you please call those that are speaking first?
Okay, so how I'm going to try to do this, and we'll see if this works, is I'm going to unmute you, and hopefully you'll be able to begin speaking. The first one that I'm going to call on is Joshua Jacobs. So please let me know. Joshua, can you hear me and can you speak?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, yes I can.
Cool, technology at its finest.
So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief. I'm going to be speaking quick because I did write a lot down. Dr. O'Hara, let me just first by stating that I appreciate some of my comments might not be relevant now that you did mention special needs, but there still is an overlining issue that I would like to present. So as some of you may know, I'm the parent of two wonderful teachers, or daughters, I'm sorry. My first is a 15-year-old sophomore in North Farmington High School. Obviously, as you're aware, she's attending high school 100% virtually. Given the circumstances, I think the teacher staff are doing an excellent job of keeping her engaged in learning. While not perfect, it is working. My second daughter is a 13-year-old special education 7th grade student at East Middle School. She's in the self-contained 1834 classroom with Miss Emmett. As you may or may not be aware, she started the year virtually, then went part-time for 3 hours at Farmington High School, then transitioned to East Middle School part-time, only to be pulled out and go back virtually 100% of the time a little over a week ago. Transition for most people is tough. Transition for our special education students is even tougher as they thrive on routine and consistency. Special education, although not tonight, a lot of the times feels like it's being lumped in with the decisions the district is making with general education students. This should not be the case, as most special education students cannot learn virtually. Their IEP goals are not being met. With 100% virtual learning, my daughter is only receiving about 2 hours online instruction per day, while my other daughter receives about 5 hours of online instruction per day. I do not blame the teachers, as it would be impossible for these kids to sit at a computer all day. In fact, my special education daughter, Allie, cannot use a computer on her own and requires full support to interact online, which is why it's vital for her to get back in the classroom. I maintain that if you are able to continue with kids practicing playing football, our district has an obligation to find a way for our special education students to get back to the classroom. While sports and special needs are not exactly the same, what message are you sending to the parents of special needs kids when you make exceptions for football, but not our special needs children? Every safety reason the district gives for virtual learning goes out the door as football continues to be played. How can a classroom with less than 10 people be less safe than kids tackling each other on the field over and over again? I recently sat indoors with a mask in my other daughter's late diving meet for over 5 hours. Again, how is diving meet more safe in a classroom setting for special needs? I could go on, but I hope you get the point, which is that it appears to me and others that this district has put a priority on team sports being played safely over our special needs children's education in person. In closing, I leave you with the following. I urge this board and the administration to work together to allow our special education students back in the classroom for in-person learning 100% of the time. Given the small population we're talking about, I know this is possible. Have a plan in place so that if there are cases at one school in the district, it does not affect kids at other schools. Communicate with your teachers and parents before making drastic changes. Have conversations. I can tell you that teachers and paraprofessionals I speak with want to be in the classroom. We all feel we're being left out of the conversation. Our kids are being negatively affected more than the general education students. These students are our most vulnerable group of kids who do not have voices to speak for themselves. Therefore, we must advocate on their behalf to do what is right. Having these students in school for those that choose is right can be accomplished safely. If we found a way for our football team to be on the field, then we can find a way for our special education students to be in the classroom. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Okay, the next is Rasheen.
Mrs. Buckley, before we begin, I'm just going to say that Mr. Mukamal has the timer, so those speaking need to be mindful of watching Mr. Mukamal. It will let me know when your time is up.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, they will be overtaken by the Imperial March.
Okay, Rasheen, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. I'm writing this letter as a group with a group of over 200 elementary and secondary teachers and FPS staff, many of whom are parents in the district who are concerned about the return of the face-to-face learning that is slated to begin Monday, November 16th. We feel that this is of utmost importance to our entire community. We're all aware of the numbers and the statistics currently, but our greatest concern is the impact that this transition is going to have on our students. Our top priority has always been educating our students while promoting their social and emotional health. Children need some sort of normalcy and consistency now more than ever. Whether they stay remote or go back in person, they'll potentially have to adjust to a new teacher, new classmates, and or a new schedule. And those students returning in person will have the added adjustment of a new sense of what school is like because it will look nothing like it did when they left last spring. The chance that students could go through all of this just to switch back to remote after a few days of weeks is unimaginable. Teachers, students, and families alike have no assurance that this will be a long-term switch, leading to more uncertainty for everyone involved. How will teachers have adequate time to plan effective instruction when they're constantly having to plan both hybrid and full remote activities just in case something changes? And how can kids prepare for varying schedules and uprooted routines just as they're getting settled? How can families plan accordingly for childcare when things could change at any second? We're very aware that parents want their children back in school and teachers do as well. We all believe that face-to-face teaching is best for kids. That being said, students, they're now in a routine. They're receiving more synchronous time than they will if we go through this transition. They know their teachers, they know their classmates, and they're getting small group instruction, and they're learning. We're not asking for this change to not happen. We're asking for it to take place when things are more stable and when we can be more confident that it will not be a matter of days or weeks before they have to change again and go back to remote learning. Middle school and high schools are set to return in January, and we're asking for the same consideration. And with that said, we support the recommendation to delay the start of the in-person learning to January. Thanks for your time and consideration and for keeping the health and the well-being of our community at the forefront of your decision. And it's signed by about 220 staff members. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next is Mr. Dianchi. Are you here, Mr. Dianchi?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good evening, and happy birthday to Sean McGuckin. Thanks for spending your birthday bringing this important meeting to our community. I'm here tonight to support the delay of the elementary face-to-face return until January at the earliest. When you met for your initial vote, our numbers were much different than they are tonight, and we can acknowledge that they're all trending in the wrong direction. I do not think you would have had 4 yes votes in October if the data looked like this at that time. I understand this will be difficult for some families who are looking forward to sending their children back and who are looking forward to some normalcy, but we are really nowhere near normal. I have a close friend who taught in a neighboring district, and she was adamant about returning to the classroom and about sending her daughter in. And she just texted me recently, and she said, the kids aren't thrilled about being in school with all the rules in place. It's not like school. They're sad, isolated, and secluded. And now their district is back to fully virtual like us because they had large numbers of staff and students in quarantine. So now she and her daughter are okay with being at home after experiencing what going back really looked like. Because of the decisions you've made to stay mostly virtual this year, we've been able to keep our number of staff and students in quarantine and our positive tests much lower. But we heard tonight we still have 37 staff in quarantine while we're almost fully virtual. With only a fraction of students and staff back, we still had to close special education classrooms. This is why I'm also urging that you consider pushing back the return of special education classrooms. Our teachers love their students. We understand that those students are in the greatest need of face-to-face instruction, but they also have some of the greatest difficulty with wearing masks and with social distancing. We surveyed our staff and 54% were not comfortable with the level of mask wearing in the classroom. And again, this is from classrooms that had to close already. If you make a decision to wait until January, you'll provide much needed stability. Our elementary and special ed teachers have been yo-yoed back and forth this fall. They continue to prepare for contingencies and switches while also providing learning at a distance for our students. They were told to move up their conferences. They responded. They were told to fill out brand new progress reports on almost no notice, and they responded. They were told to switch their class list for AM, PM, hybrid with as minimal disruption as possible for families. They responded. But there's only so much they can do. And every other contingency we put on them detracts from their ability to teach right now in our current model. You've already heard about Dr. Herrera's recommendation tonight, and I support the delay until January for both our elementary teachers and our special education teachers, as those classrooms are not safe at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Kevin Maurer. And I might be saying your last name incorrectly. Hold on a second. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, so you pronounced my name perfectly. So that was a great job.
Good.
So, first of all, I want to thank everyone for having the opportunity to speak today. I have one middle schooler and one high school student. And my question today is about regarding trying to understand the decision process from administration for middle school enrichment and supplemental activities, for instance, as sports, basketball and robotics and things like that. I know from earlier, the last meeting, that the board deemed the enrichment and supplemental activities as critical as they provide social, emotional, and physical outlets for the students. We've been waiting in the middle school. Our middle school students have been waiting for a decision on winter sports. And we have heard that there's high risk for middle schoolers for their winter sports and enrichment activities, even while high school winter sports is still ongoing. I would like to understand what was the input into the district's decisions on winter sports for middle schools, if they've already made a decision or yet to make a decision. To my knowledge, the students or parents were not surveyed about their interest or concerns on having these activities. I can tell you that I'm an engineer at a Farmington Hills supplier located in Farmington Hills, and I've volunteered over the last 4 or 5 years on some STEM projects in the elementary school, so I can see firsthand the benefit of these enrichment type activities for the students. So I'm asking, I cannot stress the importance of enrichment activities such as sports and robotics, how they are for our middle schoolers as developmental young adults. And I kindly request that the district makes a broader evaluation on winter sports before canceling. For instance, what is the feedback from middle school parents and students? How can the the high school in Farmington be moving forward with winter activities, but not middle school? And also, how are the other district and our surrounding areas able to provide these activities? And let's say we're at high risk of canceling them. Thank you again for listening. Look forward to a positive outcome.
Thank you. Okay, that's all of the people that asked to speak virtually. So now whoever is going to start reading the public comments can do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Terry.
Oh, Terry, are you starting? Terry, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mrs. Weems is starting. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Mr. Rich has offered to start up at number 11, so I will stop reading after number 11. The first comment comes to us from Laura Moyers. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Laura Moyers, and I teach 5th grade at Gill Elementary. I have taught in the school district for 25 years and absolutely love my students, their families, and my colleagues. Teaching in Farmington has been a gift and continually has given my life true purpose. As I try to keep myself abreast of where the pulse of our people is in Farmington, in FPS, I have read some citizens' comments which have taken me aback. For example, some citizens of our community believe that teachers just don't want to go back to seeing their students. Some community members have even labeled our teachers as lazy. I want to say to all of you that this couldn't be further from the truth. A current day in the life for myself as a 5th grade teacher is 7:30 a.m. Look over my email, my plans, post my daily learning plan and the announcements, and send out individual plans to students who need scaffolding with their assignments and learning plan. Also, I send texts to parents, grandparents, and colleagues on our daily plan. 8:30, small group meet with a group of girls who need more individualized attention, a moral boost, and a review of the expectations of the day. 9:10, morning meeting with all of my students where we greet each other, de-stress, wish each other well, and create our daily commitments. 9:30 to 10:15, take attendance, go over my lesson plans, and make last-minute changes. 10:15 to 11:30, teach language arts live and meet with small groups who have questions or need support. 11:30, try to eat lunch while I check emails, text from parents and colleagues, and get ready for my next lesson. 12 to 1:15, teach language arts live, same as above. 1:15 to 2:30, teach language arts live, same as above. 2:30 to 3:30, assess students or meet with students or parents who are confused. 3:30, on and off for the rest of the evening. I check emails, call and text parents, and look at my lessons for the next day. I will personally drop everything to help students, parents, and colleagues. The bottom line is our teachers have never worked harder, and we love what we do. We just want to teach in a safe environment where we truly believe that our students are safe and learning. My question I end with is this. Why did our district decide it was not safe for our staff and students to go back to in-person learning 1 week ago, and now our district believes it is safe when our numbers in Oakland County are higher than 1 week ago and warrant us to learn from home? Please explain to us why our district is not listening to our health department and science. The next comment comes from Kyle Curtis. As an elementary school teacher, I am asking that the board please consider staying remote until January. Students and staff need consistency and to be assured more safety than is available at this time. The rush to in-person could potentially cause more damage at this point. Teachers are working around the clock to ensure that elementary students are thriving in a remote setting. I'm eager for in-person as well, but not willing to risk my own safety for my family, and most importantly, the safety of my students and their families. Please consider staying remote for consistency during this already trying and difficult times for us all. The next one comes from Amanda Jacobs. I'm on line 4. I am writing again to ask the board to postpone in-person learning for the elementary level like what was done for the secondary level. Cases not only in Michigan but also in Oakland County are on the rise and are increasing greatly every day. While I understand these comments are community spread and not necessarily school spread, it is still important that elementary remain remote until after the holiday break in December. There were multiple cases with many exposures within 1 week in several elementary schools, and this was with minimal staff and students in the building. This is concerning. We are also entering cold and flu season as well as upcoming breaks where we as a district cannot control what families do. From my experience, many families send their students to school with a cold or the flu, which then spreads rapidly throughout the building. How much quicker will COVID spread within our buildings? My other concern includes the metrics that were originally presented to you. Don't seem to be the metrics currently being followed for back to in-person learning. Parents were surveyed based on the original metrics, and many have had to make different decisions based on different information being released. This does not seem fair to our community stakeholders. I would also like to bring up the fact that Oakland County has moved from a level C to a level E. This seems serious to surrounding districts, but not to our own. Many surrounding districts who were in person have now gone back to remote learning because of this level change. Yet Farmington is proposing to do the opposite. This just doesn't sit well with me as a teacher and a stakeholder in our district. Also, changing the start of school week by week will be difficult for families and teachers in planning for childcare and for school instruction. In my opinion, changing the start date once or twice seems better and easier for families and staff rather than waiting on pins and needles every week to see what the district will do. Going week by week is added stress and anxiety for families and teachers and is not good for anyone's emotional health. I'm asking the board to really think about the safety and emotional well-being of our students and their families and our staff and their families and postpone the return to school date for the elementary level until after the holiday break in December. One delay instead of waiting week by week. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next comment is from Christine Kish. When you had looked at the data of returning to face-to-face for K-5, it was said that you would be using the Oakland County Health Department's recommendation. I am curious what your reaction is from the health department deeming that it is high risk for in-person learning. With other districts going back to full remote, how is it week by week enough adequate time for parents to make plans for their children? The next comment comes from Kristen Gentry. The spread of COVID-19 is getting exponentially worse across the country and across our state. As we head into holidays where people are gathering in groups and winter where it has been expected that numbers will increase, I implore you to please delay the return to school for K-5. In the last week, we have seen some of the highest case numbers in Michigan. November 3rd, 3,106 cases. November 4th, 4,101. November 5th, 5,710. November 6th, 3,763. November 7th, 6,225. And November 9, 9,010 cases, 2-day total. In addition to this, as of Monday, November 9th, the state positivity rate was 10.2%. As a district, you have stated that there will be 3 metrics we will be following to guide us. Oakland County infection rate, positive test rate for Oakland County, and number of cases per million in the county. Currently, the Oakland County infection rate is 1.21, has a positivity rate of 10.6, and 371 cases per million. We have surpassed what we originally stated would be our metrics for return, and the Oakland County Health Department has recommended that schools go remote based on the data we are seeing. With almost every day that passes, our country, our state, and our county are surpassing previous case numbers. You have already made the wise decision to keep the middle school and high schoolers home. It is time for you to follow suit and keep our little ones safe until we have this thing under control. The next comment is from Lindsay Novara. I'm an elementary teacher in Farmington Public Schools where I teach English learner children. I know that we are currently planning on returning to a hybrid model of learning on November 16th, but I'm deeply concerned about this decision, given the soaring numbers of COVID cases throughout our state and county. As I am sure that you are aware, Oakland County currently has at least 302.1 daily cases per million and has a 9.5% positive test results as of November 4th data from the following website, mystartmap.info. In addition, the health criteria that was originally given from the district stated that in order to return to school, the following health metrics would need to be met: a percentage positive of less than 4%, 30 to 35 COVID cases per million, and 14 days of decreasing or flattening cases within Oakland County. With none of the health metrics being met, our current COVID data does not support a return to in-person learning. Thank you for postponing the return to learning date, which was supposed to begin on November 9th, yet I'm not sure what additional safety measures have happened between the decision to not return on the 9th and today. In fact, between the time this decision was made and today, the number of cases in our state and in our county have greatly increased. Given the fact that we do not currently meet the health standards to return to in-person instruction, as well as the increasing numbers of COVID-19 cases throughout our state and county, I urge you to consider postponing our return to a hybrid model of learning for the health and safety of all students and staff. The next comment comes from Melissa Nuda. I teach in a district that is partially face-to-face, and our students and teachers are getting sick. To suggest that transmission to in-person education would not happen until there was an infection rate of 1% or lower. It was 1.25 in October and has grown since then. You would not return until the positive testing rate was less than 4%. It was 5.9% in October and has increased until there were 30 to 35 cases per million of COVID-19. There were 174 in October, and that number has also grown. All of this data was gathered from your own website. Why are you considering breaking your word to your community and telling your families that their children cannot catch COVID-19 in classrooms? We have a responsibility to our communities, and that is to stop the spread as much as possible. We know that the virus spreads quickly and in closed spaces with inadequate ventilation. We are violating our social responsibilities if we create events that speed up the spread. Please show your community that you care about them and are worthy of trust by sticking to the metrics that you published on your website. The next comment comes from Paul Sandy. My name is Paul Sandy, and I'm a Farmington Hills resident and a teacher in the Pontiac School District. I am sending you a comment as a MyPOR Union Caucus member in support of Farmington Hills teachers and staff. It was great that you delayed the reopening of secondary school, but you should put all students K through 12 online until it is safe. There are lives and futures on the line. This virus kills and it leaves permanent health damage to many who survive it, and health simply comes first. Online saves lives. The next comment is the last comment that I will read, and I will transition it to Mr. Rich. It comes from Jane Blue. As a parent in the district and also a teacher face-to-face right now, I can tell you that the Oakland County Health Department does not have a clear picture of what is actually transpiring in schools that are in person. The dashboards are incredibly deceiving, and the school spread isn't being shown because most kids are not getting tested. They may be sick and are quarantining, but without kids being tested, the health department isn't investigating, and therefore the numbers are very skewed as to what the transmission and spread rates actually are in schools. I've supported your decisions thus far and hope you continue to make decisions in the best interest of both student and staff health and safety. Lastly, I ask that if you decide to continue with the face-to-face return plan, that you resurvey parents about their preferences on their children returning or staying virtual, and do not make them stay committed to the decision when the initial survey was sent out at the end of September and transmission and positivity rates were much lower. Although I felt mostly comfortable in September with hybrids, do choose that option. Right now, I am not willing to send my child in person and would like the opportunity to change my mind given the drastic changes in circumstances. Thank you for your time. Mr. Rich, I'm at line, it's 11 for me.
Gotcha.
Karen Butler.
Is Karen Butler. Right now, students are learning. Strong relationships have been formed. A full day of instruction is occurring. Growth, not always measured by standardized testing, is happening. While our FPS school community is safe, it is not safe to return to in-person instruction from letters signed by a large number of stakeholders. When districts are at a level E, the recommendation is for buildings with known cases in staff or students, but no ongoing transmissions, is to, quote, consider remote instruction for the entire district, end quote. Based on this recommendation, we should be staying remote. The original metric criteria measures the district was using, we currently do not meet. The Oakland County Health Department form says our students should be learning remotely. There's nothing indicating that we should move forward with face-to-face learning. Reconsider, postpone, keep all safe. The next is from Mary George. I am a teacher at East Middle School. As a secondary teacher, I currently teach remotely. Our elementary teachers are scheduled to imminently return to their buildings with students, and there are strong safety concerns that should be considered with the recent surge in COVID-19 cases across our nation and across the state of Michigan. With viruses, there are no borders that stop their spread. As a mother, teacher, resident of Farmington Hills, and grandmother, I understand the need for students to return to school, but this should occur only when it is safe to do so. As an educator, I make my decisions based on latest data, and as board members representing our district and community, you do too. In the past few days, the COVID-19 data has shifted dramatically. Some important data include the following. According to WDIV Channel 4, this morning, hospitalizations jumped by nearly 400 over the weekend, now at its highest point since late April. Positive test rate over the last 2 days broke the 11% mark. Additionally, Michigan's 7-day moving average for daily cases was 4,231 on Sunday, the highest it has ever been. The 7-day death average was 34, the highest since early June. The state's fatality rate is 3.6%. The state also reports active cases, which were listed at 71,200 on Sunday, near its highest mark on record. It does not seem to me that these increases make any face-to-face learning arrangements safe at this time. Consider also that Bloomfield Hills and Bloomfield High School have returned to remote learning since they experienced outbreaks in their schools. There are other districts across Michigan that have had to make these types of closures for safety's sake, or which have gone back to remote teaching. Other districts throughout the state are closing schools for a week or two at a time after exposures and back and forth transitions that happen are not good for students nor not their families. Some districts have limited busing because bus drivers are out ill. Others are finding that they do not have enough subs to cover classes when teachers are quarantined. It is only logical that this scenario will occur locally as the surge continues. I urge you to look at the latest data and the projections that the current data indicates. This is a dangerous time for all of us. Placing children and their teachers in small spaces for extended periods of time is risky at best. As young children are often asymptomatic, we do not know what degree of spread they cause because that spread is invisible. Without conclusive studies about this and without widespread testing and contact tracing, we do not know how to keep everyone safe. Please make your decisions with the best possible current information to keep us all safe during this increasing spread of the virus, and wait to return to face-to-face learning when the data shows that it is safe to return, not while the rates are soaring. Next is from Laura Perry. I hope the board decides to keep students in a virtual setting. When the decision was first made to bring elementary kids back for half days, I thought it might be risky, but if, as a whole, everyone thinks it is safe, then I will trust that decision. I have since reconsidered. I have not heard any new communication stating that we can reconsider our decision to keep our kids home to continue virtual learning. I think the board should extend the virtual learning for elementary students until January and reconsider at that time. Hospitalizations are up 215%, and they have found that kids are carriers of the disease even though they may show no or minor symptoms. Keep our kids safe. Next is from Dan Engelhart. Why is it that we cannot have sports for the middle school kids, but the high school kids are able to? This kids also need sports, and there is no data showing any difference between 12 and 14-olds and 15, 18-olds. So if the high schools are able to have their sports, so should the middle school kids. Okay, next is Megan Steele. One moment. There we go. I've been advocating for a return to school option since the past summer when the Board of Education voted to keep all students remote at the start of the year. My biggest fear was that students would not return at all first semester given the potential of a second wave of COVID-19 in late fall/winter. And here we are, elementary and secondary have yet to return to school, yet we are surrounded by various other public and private schools that have given in-person learning a chance. It would have been so worth it for kids to return to school, even if it was for the short term. At least teachers would have had some chance of connecting with their students, know what they truly look like, and for students to actually meet their classmates. Farmington was not even willing to allow for students to come in person for potential tutoring, which is so sad. When I hear staff comment that they can tutor just as well virtually, it makes me see that people truly don't seem to understand that virtual learning does not work for all students. Data continues to show that COVID-19 is not occurring in the classroom, yet the district won't even allow small groups in for tutoring, yet sports are being played. As the district moves forward, I hope you will be looking to increase live instruction to 5 days per week, whether it's a hybrid model or remote learning. I've heard that it is too late to change the live instruction time, yet Rochester Schools and Grosse Pointe recently changed their model and increased their live instruction to 5 days per week, even though they are remote. Learning is being lost. Why not try to offer kids more in an already imperfect system? Also, I want to thank the special education teachers and parapros that had been back to school working with their students in person until recently. So many families are so grateful to you. The time has come to start giving the students and parents a voice in the decision-making process. Thank you. Next is from Paul Kopp. My son has autism and has been attending Visions Unlimited half-time. He recently abruptly was forced to 100% virtual, ostensibly due to Oakland County being moved to an E status. There have been no cases in Visions, yet his school was forced to close, reportedly unilateral by the superintendent. This is despite Dr. Russell Faust, medical director for Oakland County, commenting to WXYZ on November 2nd that of all the hundreds of teachers and students who we have quarantined, virtually all of them have acquired their infection outside of schools, and frankly, in the students, it has been primarily through sports activities. He says outbreaks in schools have been relatively small and rare. He further states, we have the power to issue a health order to close a school, and we would certainly consider that if we were seeing transmission in schools, and we are just not. It's puzzling that one of the top health experts in Oakland County speaks optimistically about schools, but not about sports, and the reaction to the situation is precisely the opposite. It is well established that students with disabilities do not do well with virtual learning. Because of the virtual situation for special education, I'm currently paying $2,400 a month for a private setting based on what seems like hasty decisions made out of fear or at the very least lacking clear criteria. The district has denied my request for reimbursement, and the superintendent has refused to answer emails from myself and other community members I am aware of. Yet, the district is happy to accept federal and state monies for special needs students while providing at best a window dressing of an education. This is in no way meant to judge the professionals that are working with the students, as I believe them to be making the best of the circumstances. I thank the staff that has volunteered to work in person to help preserve our students' future. It's just that in an impossible situation that, quite frankly, untenable. The district is not in compliance with federal IDEA laws and is out of compliance with nearly every IEP I am aware of. There have been federal class actions in other states to try and force districts to understand federal laws are not suspended during pandemics. How long before the district or districts in Michigan face similar lawsuits? My request to the board is to have clear public reaction plans in place with hard criteria. Hard criteria. Quote, we will follow the science, end quote, is not good enough. Closing only because the county moved to a new status is also not acceptable. Having sports without special education is not acceptable. Please follow the students' IEPs as required by federal law and ensure this generation of special education doesn't lose precious years necessary to live as independently as possible. Parents will not be patient indefinitely. Thank you for your continued service. Next is from Jenna Latimer. This is the first time I've ever written and given my feelings to you. Normally, I trust the opinions of the experts and let those decisions run their course. Too many things have made me need to be heard now. I was on team, quote, send them to school, end quote. But now, with knowing my son is going to have to switch teachers and the cases rising at a crazy rate, I'm now leaning towards keep him home. I was sick to my stomach when I found out he was switching teachers. When they put classes together, they take time to specifically match and place students in certain classes. He was purposely put in with who he has for many reasons, and now if they go back, that all changes, potentially disrupting how he learns, behaves, etc. To our surprise, with being out of the traditional classroom, he's doing so well right now academically. Not to mention, if they go back full-time eventually, will he get her back in person like he was supposed to all along? We've been told not likely. I really wish the district would have thought about these issues like other districts have back when classes were formed. From the start, many of other districts place students in classes to be prepared to go back at any time without disrupting the class. I am really regretting my decision on having him go back. And then there's COVID. The cases are rising, as you know, at a crazy rate, and to top it off without ever having students, my son's front office was exposed in quarantine. They run the school. How can you effectively run a school without the front office? They are the heartbeat of the school, and then when you add students, the chances to get even higher. Last week, I have personally known multiple people who have gotten COVID or have had their schools go back remote. I strongly urge you to reconsider sending our elementary students back until they can go back as a class with little disruption and when the cases aren't skyrocketing. Teachers are just as upset losing their students they have learned to know and establish a relationship with. Why would you tear that away? Thank you for your time. Next is from Dara Weber. Vision's had students since September 8th. Each and every staff member has been extremely diligent with cleaning and sterilizing, spacing students, keeping pods separate. It is a lot more work for us, but it is totally worth it. Our students need to be in the building with us. They need one-on-one focus and attention. Our students have voiced every day that they want to be back in the building. They are more attentive in person and are floundering at home. They have difficulty keeping focused and understand what is being said and done on when they are looking at the screen. I know this is about the health and safety, and we have done everything in our power to keep our students safe. Keep in mind that not all buildings should be treated the same. Our building is diverse with needs, and our students deserve to be in the building where their learning will accelerate. Thank you. Next is from Acacia Williams. I'm a staff member at FPS, and I'm writing to express the gravest possible objections to starting in-person instruction at this time. Our community is currently receiving a grade of E from the health department. The statistics are easy enough to find. Cases are increasing quickly to the highest levels we've seen among children and adults alike. We meet exactly none of the criteria that the district had previously promised to use to determine a return to in-person learning, and the advice from the CDC is still to avoid indoor gatherings with people outside of your household. I'd also like to address the fact that with limited staff in buildings, we are not compliant with our safety protocols. There are unmasked staff in common areas, and not because they are eating. There are students in Y care wearing ill-fitting face masks, wearing their face masks incorrectly, with noses uncovered, children wearing ineffective face coverings such as gaiters, and children who appear to be ill. Parents are being allowed to enter buildings without a health screening, despite clear instructions to wear face masks. Parents have shown up to material drop-off and pick-up events without masks, wearing masks with vents, etc. We are nowhere near compliant with staff, students, or families in regards to mask wearing or social distancing for that matter. Given the widespread noncompliance, it's important to ask our parents how our parents will be informed if staff or students around their child refuse or are unable to wear a mask. Will they be informed at all? Parents have already signed their kids up for in-person learning without this knowledge. A poll conducted in mid-October revealed that 34% of Americans plan to celebrate Thanksgiving with extended friends and family. Most will do so indoors. Another 25% are considering it. When this happens and numbers go up, will we be in and out of school constantly, quarantining students, staff, classrooms, entire schools, or the whole district? How will parents make childcare plans this way? How will kids and teachers cope with the inconsistency and disruption? And what reason is there to believe that the rest of the holiday season will be any different? A study published by the Journal of the American Medical Association in July concluded that closing schools in the spring saved lives. According to the authors, school closure was associated with a significant decline in the incidence of COVID-19 and mortality. The best possible outcome was achieved, the data indicates, when schools closed early while case numbers were still relatively low, as was done in the spring. We do not need to wait for things to get worse to take decisive action. It may be that you have never thought of yourselves as heroes. It may be that you have never saved anyone's life. But in this moment, you have the power and responsibility to keep us all safe. We are nowhere near ready to go back. We have rising cases, a serious lack of compliance with safety protocols, and we haven't even entered the holiday season yet. We cannot hope to guarantee safety for our students, staff, and their families, or the wider community. I want to make sure that was the end of that.
It was.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, the forum keeps changing on me. The last comment is from Denise Gundel White. During this unpredictable time, I support the consideration of FPS students returning face-to-face to be pushed to January 2020. Teachers need consistency, students need consistency, families need consistency. Teachers, students, and families have been working so hard to get into a rhythm with remote teaching, and it is working for many. Unfortunately, since many teachers are anticipating losing and adding students with the return to hybrid, we have slowed down our momentum with our current class. This wait and see does not put any students or teachers in a good position for teaching and learning, nor does it allow families to make needed plans for moving forward with schedules, childcare, plans for holidays, etc. Aside from the consistency that we all need and are begging for, much more importantly at this time of unknowns is the reality that staying home keeps us all healthy and safe. Thank you for your consideration and for all that you do for our community. Teacher, Hillside Elementary.
Thank you, Mr. Weems. Mrs. Weems and Mr. Rich. The next item on our agenda is action items. Item A, Board of Education organizational meeting. Is there a motion related to the item A? Mr. Rich.
Thank you. So, let's see. This is just for a reminder. It's not the full organizational meeting being moved to January, as many things need to be done with the school calendar. However, this is for moving the election of officers to January in order to allow new board members the opportunity to participate in the election of officers. And so with that, I move that the Board of Education move the election of officers from June to January moving forward.
Is there support? There's support for the motion?
I'll support the motion for purposes of having a discussion.
Thank you, Mrs. Weems. We have a motion by Mr. Rich, supported by Mrs. Weems, to move the Board of Education, move the election of officers from June to January moving forward. Is there any discussion? Mr. Rich?
Sure. Just to start, I mean, we're looking at where we will be in January. There will be 3 new board members compared to the 4 that will be still on from this term. And so I think taking this decision out of their hands is not appropriate. And even when we had new members coming on back in 2019, we ended up having a change in officer elections because spaces were opened up because of the election and then because shuffling occurred.
Thank you. Are there other comments by board members?
This is Mrs. Weems. I've expressed concern before, and we've had this discussion as part of policy, and I believe that there was more support for it at the time, which is it's a little interesting now that things have changed. But my thoughts on the matter have not changed. I have concerns about asking new members to vote at an organizational meeting. I think we should stay with voting for new members at the same time as our organizational meeting and align with when we establish our goals. For us, that's usually in the summer. To be honest, I think we subject our new board members to, an opportunity to make people feel uncomfortable, frankly. They have no relationships potentially with current board members and have no understanding of board dynamics. In spite of the fact that I think there are benefits to changing leadership in January, I think that changing leadership in January would be just for the purpose of doing so would just be short-sighted. I'm very concerned about our changing our practices now. Again, in spite of whether that needs to happen or not, I think this has the potential to fracture and divide the board, and we've already had evidence of that happening before. So, again, just stating what I've stated before, I don't support it.
Any other comments by board members?
I have a comment.
Mrs. Smith?
I agree with Ms. Weems, but I do know other districts do this in January. But I do agree. As stated, we did have 3 new board members to be elected. And then in the past, we've had people come on, they weren't even on maybe one meeting and decided that they were going to make the decisions on who was going to be officers. They hadn't been on this board that long. I do agree that we should wait, but where I'm sitting, I think the officers should be changed in January for different leadership.
Okay. Thank you. I do want you to be aware that Mrs. Cummings has been able to join us. She can hear. I'm not sure, Mrs. Buckley, if you're able to unmute her so she can also participate.
Can you hear me?
There you
Yes.
are.
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. I apologize for jumping in. I had a work obligation and some family matters, but I'm here now. So sorry to interrupt.
So, Mrs. Cummings, just to bring you up to speed, we're in the middle of discussion related to a motion to move that the Board of Education move the election of officers from June to January moving forward. Motion was made by Mr. Rich, supported by Mrs. Weems, and we're now in discussion. Is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yes, unless there was someone else waiting before I jumped in.
Mr. Rich has spoken, Mrs. Weems has spoken, Mrs. Smith has spoken, and Mr. Mokamal did not raise his hand. So, so it would be you.
Okay. Well, I did share some thoughts at our last meeting. My thoughts have not changed. I think changing officers midway through the school year is disruptive. We had this 2 years ago. Ms. Green and Mr. Mukamal had just taken seats on the board, and I apologize, I can't remember if there was another new member. And quite frankly, in my perspective, it has been, oh, sorry, Mr. Rich, Mr. Rich. So, you know, from my perspective, in my opinion, it was disruptive. I would like to see some continuity, some consistency, especially during this difficult time. We'll have 3 new board members. I think that everyone on this board would remember what it's like to be a new board member, and you're just really trying to get your bearings, get your feet under you. And I think that's a lot to ask of new board members just coming on at their first or second meeting in January. So that's my 2 cents. Also, as we all know, at any time, anyone could make a motion. So even though that might not be, let's say the organizational meeting, the election of officers is kept in June or July, that doesn't mean a motion could not be made at another time. So from my perspective, just for some consistency and stability, I think it makes sense to keep that meeting as it is in the summer months. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mokamal, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, Madam Chair, I took a position on the issue 2 years ago, and my position has not changed.
Thank you. I saw your hand, Mr. Rich.
Sure. Just to quickly say, I mean, I feel like people know where they are on this issue at this point. We will, no matter what, we will end up filling a role for officers for at least vice president come January with Mr. Johnson's term expiring. Just wanted to point that out. And so our new board members will be voting on that officer position at their first meeting. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we go to vote? Okay, Mrs. Smith, can you do the roll call vote?
Ms. Weems?
No.
Ms. Cummings?
No.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Mukamal?
Yes.
I myself, no. Ms. Green?
No.
One, two.
The motion
No.
fails.
Motion passes. Yes,
The motion
I'm aware. Motion passes.
The motion does not pass.
Motion was defeated.
The motion was defeated. I'm sorry.
Yes.
What motion passes for it to be a no?
Thank you.
Please don't confuse me here.
You know, you're okay. You're okay.
Okay, thank you.
To item B, the mitigation plan support. Is there a motion? Mr. Mukamal?
I move that the Board of Education support the recommendation of the district as presented under item 7C, the return to school mitigation plan.
Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Mokomal, supported by Mr. Rich, that the Board of Education support the recommendation of the district as presented under agenda item number 7, item C, the return to school mitigation plan. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, one thing from my perspective, I don't want to rehash everything that we've just talked about, but I do want to continue to press on ensuring that we have plans in place to support students with needs, and especially those with special needs, and plans for some sort of connection and activities, over and above the regular school day to support kids. And I desperately want to start talking about plans for the next semester. We should definitely be in a position, by January where we have more definitive plans, having learned from, the first semester. We should start preparing parents now, in December for decision making in January, to the extent, we need to ask them to commit to anything. I wouldn't want that to happen, a week or two before we have to make a vote or something like that. So I just want to start seeing us, plan for the next year here.
Thank you. Any other comments? Dr. Herrera, I'm sorry, Mr. Rich.
I just wanted to echo Ms. Weems' thoughts that we definitely need to ensure that our students with IEPs and other needs, that those needs are met as best as we can, even if we aren't face-to-face or however we end up moving forward with this. We just need to make sure that our students are supported.
Thank you. And Dr. Herrera, I know that we will get a few letters inquiring, being if we do go with this plan to delay the start of elementary, students will maintain their current teacher until such time that there's something different, correct? I just want to make sure we have that out there.
Yeah, I believe that to be correct.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
I have a quick question. I was not here for the presentation, although I chair the Academic Excellence Committee. I'm very familiar with the discussions involving return to school and mitigation, et cetera. And I did have an opportunity to speak with Dr. Herrera earlier today. I just want to make sure that I understand what we're voting on, or else I will have to abstain. So, Dr. Herrera, we did speak earlier today. Is the administration making a recommendation that is consistent with what we discussed earlier?
Yes, it is consistent.
Okay. All right. Then I'm confident I can vote on this. I understand where we're at and the issues involved. So thank you.
Mrs. Cummings, I'll just quickly say that it would be elementary delay start to face-to-face until January the 11th. Maintain the secondary, as we had already previously discussed, as January 25th as the target date for return to face-to-face. Okay?
Yes, that is my understanding. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments from board members before we move to vote?
Yes. I have one comment or question. I'm going back to my board book here. What was the title of this mitigation strategy? Is there an approval of a mitigation strategy that goes to Oakland County that we were also meant to review?
Before we bring we thought when we set the agenda, we thought we'd have the mitigation plan in place or approved by Oakland County by now. And that would have given us the opportunity to consider in-person learning if they had approved our plan. So when we set the agenda, of course, the conversation has changed significantly since last Tuesday. So we didn't retitle it because we thought it'd be confusing. So we just called it the return to in-person mitigation plan and thought we could talk about everything under that agenda item, the mitigation plan, if it got back to us and was approved by Oakland County, and the return to in-person learning if we were receiving guidance from Oakland County and we would have, I guess, wanted to recommend, or if the recommendation would have been to return to in-person learning rather than continuing to pause it. So again, when the agenda was set, we were uncertain of what the final recommendation would be at that time and where we would be in the process of getting an approved mitigation plan. So that was the reason for, I guess, the unusual wording for the agenda item.
I got you. Okay.
Thank you. No other comments from board members. We will move to a roll call vote regarding the Board of Education supports the recommendation of the district as presented under agenda item 7, item C, the return to school mitigation plan. Ms. Smith, can you do roll call vote, please?
Ms. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Mukamal?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving to the next item on our agenda is consent agenda. Is there a motion related to consent agenda? Mr. Mukamal.
I move that the Board of Education approve the November 10, 2020 consent agenda as follows. A, approval of minutes of the October 20th, 2020 regular meeting.
Thank you. I'm sorry, is that you, Mrs. Cummings?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Mukamal, supported by Mrs. Cummings, to approve the Board of Education approving the November 10th, 2020 consent agenda as read. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Ms. Smith, will you please do roll call vote?
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Ms. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Mr. Mukamal?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Ms. Green?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving to the next item on our agenda, reports from board representatives. Are there any reports from board representatives?
Yeah.
Mrs. Weems?
I don't think that I have provided a report on the last PTA council meeting, which happened in November of this. Yeah. So, yes, I have a PTA council update. So the PTA council met on the first Monday of November, shared a lot of good information. Chris Gregg was in attendance. She is in her last term. She discussed education funding. She explained how the pandemic exposed a lot of failures in the system and shed some light on matters that she expects will have some actions coming or requiring attention in the future, and that there's work to be done there. She recapped that the election results showed that almost 3 million people had already voted at the beginning of November, and that for the first time she's passing the role that she has from one woman to another, and she seemed really proud to be part of that history. She also announced that she was able to secure a grant for Warner Mansion in the amount of $85,000 for renovations, which was great news. And she also talked about the surge in cases and the number of deaths throughout Oakland County, and that things were changing very rapidly. She commended Farmington Public Schools for all of the supports that they put in place for mitigation. And she also acknowledged that this is a tough period for everyone, for administration, for parents, for teachers and students, and the need for everyone to kind of be graceful. Dr. Herrera provided an update on Farmington Public Schools, and there was an update from the Farmington Hills Foundation on the Toast to Education. They announced that they would postpone the annual Toast to Education until next year. They had already previously announced that they were moving it to May, but now they've made the decision that they're going to move it to November. So we'll just miss an entire year there. And I think that ends my report.
Thank you very much. Are there any other reports from board members? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Superintendent announcements, Dr. Herrera.
Thank you, President Green. Yes, just a quick note regarding a big thank you and acknowledgement of our management team, which are all of our supervisors and principals and district level leadership. You know, I just have to say, every meeting I have with that group, I grow more respectful of their expertise, their understanding of the district and their programs and the work that they do. I've come to the point where I don't know that if I could make a decision on my own anymore in the district already. I rely so heavily on their input and influence on decisions. I just want to make sure that our school board and school community knows that these are truly group rep. I may be the spokesperson, but I believe I'm speaking on behalf of our management team and district leadership team when I make recommendations to the board. I'd also like to thank our union leadership and our UNICEF director, Lori Tunick, and our union presidents. Had an opportunity to meet with them recently as well. And as a matter of fact, just earlier today, I truly appreciated our conversation today. We certainly talked about what was going to be presented to the board, but we also talked about our roles and responsibilities in helping develop our district culture and the image of the district as we earn our credibility with community on every decision that we make. It was a great conversation from my end. We did it in the context of the day's recommendation from the administration, and I look forward to future conversations with our leadership, union leadership. I know we in the past we've called that 3-pillar work. But I was reminded again today how important that work really is to key decisions in the district and to make sure that we have all our key stakeholder groups together and well informed as we make decisions. So I'm looking forward to re-engaging in working with them and maybe more intentionally growing the 3-pillar work throughout the district. So just wanted to make mention of those two things. And of course, I want to thank our building principals and our teachers. You know, when we make decisions, I don't think we always understand of what it takes on their end to make those decisions come to life. and so for our teachers, you know, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding of us at the district level as we try to consider things that they may not have to consider. And we try to consider multiple perspectives that impact the overall district. But we do understand that they're going to impact their classrooms. So thank you for your patience and your willingness to provide input to us so that we know we're hearing your voice. But also our building principals, the amount of work that they put into communicating to parents on an individual basis, the amount of scheduling, the amount of conversations they've had with their staff on returning back to work and then not returning back to work. There's not a harder working group in this district or probably in the county. So we need to make sure that we're acknowledging our principals and everything they've done to continue to hold our school together and keep us on a path moving forward and to keep us, moving effectively. So just in a brief nutshell, you can see that we should be very thankful for the group that we work with and the fact that they're so committed to our district and our families.
Thank you, Dr. Herrera. I just want you to know that Mrs. Cummings just let me know that her computer has frozen for some reason, so she's trying, but may not be able to join us back. Our next item on the agenda is recommendations for future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, good and welfare. Is there any good and welfare? Mr. Mukmal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to join you in congratulating the new board members. So to Cheryl Blau, Mabel Fox, and Claudia Heinrich, I congratulate you on your victories and wish you all the very best as you take on this very important responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mokmal. Any other good and welfare from board members?
Just one from me.
Mrs. Wayne?
Yeah, I would also like to echo that congratulations and also wish well all of the board members who have been serving, who will be ending their term at the end of December. Wanted to acknowledge the MASB Delegate Assembly last week. There were 2 new board members who attended. There was great discussion on mental health and learning plans in a COVID learning environment, including the Board of Education's responsibilities. So that was great. I'm sorry, the new folks did not attend the Delegate Assembly. They attended the annual leadership conference, which was later on in the week. So it's a 4-day conference, and we had 2 of our new board members attending, which was a great opportunity for learning. They announced that there will be free materials being offered to new members, which was excellent. So each one will receive a Becoming a Better Board Member book, which is actually a bit expensive for the district. So we'll be getting that resource for our new folks. And all current board members will receive a free digital copy of the Open Meetings Guide, and that will be delivered in the next couple of weeks. So that was great news. I wanted to acknowledge that there are lots of ways to spread kindness over the next few weeks and months. Goodfellows Food Drive, which was announced earlier today. The CARES of Farmington Hills continues its work. I visited last week and was amazed by what they're doing. They could use some help. I became inspired to expand my family's annual giving this year, and am expanding to organize a project to feed 30 families this Thanksgiving with a full meal delivered in time for the holidays. We've already got more than half of our goal in gathering items and volunteers, and I want to thank everyone who's participated so far, including our board members who are contributing. I'm very excited. Any donations collected in excess of what we need will be contributed and donated to CARES. So if anyone's interested in that, please contact me. A bit of fun. The tradition of the silly ID cards continues. North Farmington High School started their silly ID cards at the end of October, or beginning of November. It was really fun, very high attendance. When I attended, it appeared as if over 200 students had already been in for their pictures, and they were still going. I was really excited to see so much engagement, and I know that Farmington High School is also considering the same. I think they may be doing something a little bit different with their silly IDs. I would encourage students to use their cameras. Just one little plug there. I've heard from several teachers that 100% of students using cameras are doing extremely well in their class. So I heard that and wanted to share that for parents who might be interested. And then lastly, I wanted to applaud schools who are starting listening circles to share, to allow students to share their thoughts and feelings and help them feel heard given all that's happening in the world, and certainly with respect to the first few months of school. So just wanted to share all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other board members?
Yes, I have something to say. I know you can't see my hand, but I would like to say congratulations to all those that ran a hard campaign, and I'm saying congratulations to you. I have reached out to our new colleagues, and I am looking forward to working with them and building a collaborative relationship. It's a long time coming. I'm looking forward to it, and I am being very optimistic. Also, congratulations to Sam Stekaloff for taking the state rep seat, hoping that she will do just as great of a job as Chris Craig and those before her. We all know that Sam had her mom as also being a state rep at one point or time. So with that being said, I also want to say thank you to Ms. Weems for reaching out, asking us to take part in the Thanksgiving feast for those. Many are not fortunate to be able to have a Thanksgiving meal, let alone a meal. I've been blessed to not go hungry during not only this time, but over the years. And I myself have contributed over the past to do things for families in need, and this was right on time. So I want to thank Ms. Weems for doing this. And if you can help, you know, Walmart has what? Dressing stovetop for $1 and something, canned goods, 80 cents. Let's just think of giving back for those that cannot have. You know, I even was contributing to my hairstylist, even though I couldn't go. You know, that money was put off to the side for her. So if we can help those, we've got to learn to do better, to be better. And I think that's what's going to happen with our newly elected board members and some things going on into the future. And that's my good and welfare. And again, Ms. Weems, thank you. Thank you to Mr. Weems and that fraternity. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. This was a really good idea to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to add, we heard earlier that somebody who was instrumental in making these things happen, Mr. Rich, I just saw you, so I'll jump back to you, that it's a special day for Mr. McGuckin. Sean, we want to wish you a happy birthday. Thank you for spending your birthday night with us so that our community can view the board meeting and we can conduct this. You have been instrumental, supportive, and we cannot thank you enough. So on behalf of the board, we all wish you a wonderful, wonderful, happy birthday. Mr. Rich.
Well, I will keep this brief so that Sean can celebrate the rest of his birthday without us. Thank you all so much for the team that is put together and put so much into the work that's being done to keep our students safe, making sure that they are still being educated. Congratulations to the newly elected board members. I look forward to working with each and every one of you. We have a lot of work to do, and I am looking forward to seeing how you bring your vision into our district. There's a reason that there are 7 members on this board, and we don't see things all the same way. And we are able to grow and learn from each other, and I am so looking forward to our time serving together. With that, that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I think you're gonna be the only man on the board again, right? Well, 6 women and 1 guy, right?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah.
And just I want to pass along, Mrs. Cummings is asked to convey her apologies for her technical issues. It does appear that it's on her end. So our fingers are crossed that she gets it going for her students to have school tomorrow. But she wanted to send her apologies along. So with that, seeing that there's no further business and if there's no objection, this meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening.